Hey, welcome back to Mr. P Helps with Algebra. This is Unit 2, Topic 3, Lesson number 1. We're starting system of equations now, and we have some substitution for the warm-up. So we're going to substitute x and y in to see if any of these points match any of these systems. So if we could put 4 in for y, so solving for a, 4 in for y, and 1 in for x, that'd be 3 times 1 minus 2. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 minus 2 is 1. So 4 does not equal 1. That is not true. So that means A cannot be an answer. So I do the same thing for B. Put 9 in for y and 2 in for x. Substitute and solve that. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. 9 does not equal 4. So that proves that B, 2, 9, can also not be a point. So the last one I'm going to do is letter C. Happens to be, so y is negative 1/2 equals 3 times 1/2 minus 2. 1/2 of 3 is 1/2 minus 2 is negative 1/2. Now, I can't just circle it because it satisfies the first equation. It also satisfies the second equation. So negative 1/2 does equal the opposite of 1/2. So that one does work. Now in question number 2, A works, and I can prove that here. 2 times x, oops, I forgot about the y. So 13 equals 2 times 8 minus 3. 2 times 8 is 16, minus 3 is 13. So that does work. And 8 plus 5 is also 13. So A is an answer. If you do it for any of the other ones, maybe I can do it very easily right here. So x is negative 7 plus 5 is not 6. That would be negative 2. So that's not an answer. And 0 plus 5 would be 5, not 4. So that's not an answer either. I use this one because that was the easier one to figure out. Okay, so in this we're going to be starting a business. We're going to be starting a pet sitting business. So we're going to have two different constraints. A constraint is something that limits you. So in this case, we're going to be limited by space and startup costs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write two inequalities that represents each one of these constraints. And the point of this lesson is to figure out, well, how many cats and how many dogs would be the most profitable for my business if you make $20 a day per dog and $8 a day for each cat. All right, so starting us off, so it starts us off with 12, 12 as an option. And you try 12 dogs and 12 cats, and you find out that that costs too much. It happens to be exactly 360 space, but it ends up costing too much, so that is not a viable solution. That is too expensive. So let's talk about the equation. How do I know that that's going to work? So I'm going to come up with two different equations, and I'll go back to the question right here. So you have 360 feet of space, 24 per dog, and 6 per cat. So if I make x dogs and y cats, that would be 24 per dog plus 6 per cat. Has to be less than or equal to 360 because they can use less than the space that they have. They just can't use more. They can also use all the space you have. So this represents space. Then I also need to come up with an equation for startup costs. Oh my gosh. Hey, welcome back to Mr. P Helps with Algebra. This is Unit 2, Topic 3, Lesson 1. Starts off with this is system of equations that this topic is all about. So we have three different points here. We're trying to see if which one of these satisfies the system. So I'm going to plug 1 in for x and 4 in for y and see if it works. So if y is 4 equals 3 times 1 minus 2. So 3 times 1 is 3 minus 2 is 1. And 1 does not equal 4. So that's not true. So I would cross A off. Since it doesn't satisfy this equation, then it doesn't even matter if it works for this one because it already doesn't work for one of them. It's got to work for both. So in B, we've got 9 equals 3 times 2 minus 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 does not equal 9. So B is also not an answer. So for the last one, so we've got C, negative 1/2. Equals 3 times 1/2 minus 2. Put that, there we go. So 1/2 of 3 is 1/2. 1/2 minus 2 is negative 1/2. So that works. Now I'm not going to circle it just yet because this point also has to satisfy the second equation. So that's negative 1/2 equals the opposite of 1/2. So that is true. All right, for number 2, A is going to be the only one that works. If I put 13 in for y, 13 equals 2 times 8 minus 3. That's 16 minus 3 makes 13, so that works. If you put in the other one, 8 plus 5 is 13. It also works there. So that was A. So I can do the same thing for B. 13 equals 2 times negative 7 minus 3. So that's negative 14 minus 3 more makes negative 17. So that's clearly not an answer. And then C, we've got 4 equals 2 times nothing minus 3. Well, 2 times nothing is nothing. Minus 3 makes negative 3. So that is also not an answer. I didn't even have to look down here because it didn't satisfy the first equation. It's got to satisfy both to be an answer. All right, so we're going to be doing pet sitting. This is day 1 of this lesson, which is talking about Carlos and Clarita, and they are starting a pet business. They want to pet sit. So they're going to make money with this business by watching people's pets, but they're going to start their business by figuring out if they have enough space and whether or not they have enough money to start up by buying the pens that's required. Now, these are what we call constraints. Constraints are something that limits you. In this case, they're limited by how much space in the shed they have, which is 360 square feet, and how much money they have to buy the pens, which are $1,280 that they have made in a previous business. So, first thing you need to do is come up with an equation for each. And I would use standard form. Let x equal the amount of dogs and y equal the amount of cats. X equals dogs, y equals cats, and I can set it up. So once I've got my variables labeled, so we've got 24 feet per dog plus 6 feet per cat, has to be less than or equal to the 360. They can use up all their space, they can use less space, they just can't use more than what they have. For startup costs, it's going to cost $80 per dog plus $32 per cat, and that has to be less than or equal to $1,280. All right, so now that I've got my equations, now I'm ready to consider making my table. So if I make 12 dogs and 12 cats, we're going to do graphing later, but we're going to right now just figure out, well, you know, what's going to be viable and what's non-viable and what's going to be possibly the best option for this. So if I put 12 in for dogs and 12 in for cats into those two inequalities right here, if you put 12 in for x here and 12 in for y here, sort of like you did on the warm-up, you end up getting exactly 360 space. So that works so far. But costs ends up being too much. If you put 80 times 12 plus 32 times 12, it ends up being more than 1280. In fact, I believe, if my memory serves me right, it's 1344, which means this is not a viable solution. So you continued in class and you figured out, well, what are some possible viable solutions? You might have came up with one that was close, dogs and cats, so maybe like 11-11 works. I wouldn't try 10-10 because, well, 11-11 is already more cats than dogs, and it does work, so that's a viable solution. Then you might want to start thinking about, well, what if there's no dogs? You can have 40 cats, I believe. 40 times, how much was the cat? 6 is, trying to do the math. Here we go. So 6 times 40 makes 240 space. So that's leaving a lot of space empty. And 32 times 40 ends up being 1280 exactly. So that used up all your money, but leaves a lot of space left over because the cat pens are much smaller than the dog pens. Or you could have done all dogs, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 15-0. 15 times dogs, let's see, 24. So you would just simply do the math, figure out, and that will give you these numbers right here. Then you can do some combinations of the two. So I believe it was 12-10, or it might have been 10-12, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, that these combinations would also work as well. So there's lots of combinations here that do work. And then if you know that dogs pay $20, so it tells you down here that each customer has to pay $20 per dog and $8 a day per cat. So the next thing you want to do is figure out, well, how much money am I going to make with each one of these viable solutions? And it ends up being that $320 is the most you can possibly make. And there are like 5 ways of getting that. I don't have them all memorized off the top of my head, but feel free to try to find all 5 of them. There might have been 6. I can't remember exactly. There was about 5 of those answers, though. Okay, so the homework, determining multiple solutions to inequalities in 2 variables. A theater wants to make in at least $2,000. So that means not less than, greater than. They want to make at least $2,000 for a certain matinee. Children's tickets cost $5 each, so let's make those X for children. And adult tickets cost $10 each. We'll make that Y. Find 5 combinations of children and adult tickets that will make their goal. Well, I'm thinking off the top of my head, if I get $1,000 from each children and adults, then that would make $2,000. So how many adult tickets of $10 each would I need for 1,000? That would be 100. And I would need 200 children tickets, and that would be exactly $2,000. Now, keep in mind that there is no limitation here on how many tickets we can sell. So it says find 5 combinations of adult tickets that would make the goal. So technically, I can just say 200 of each would also make the goal. Well, if 200 children and 100 adults, now I'm really just adding another $1,000, which means this is going to be $3,000. I know I kind of just beat the system there a little bit, and I'll kind of cheat it again. What if I sell 0 children's tickets? Then how many adult tickets would I need to sell? That would be 200. 0 to 100 should work. Or what if I sell 0 adult tickets? If this was 0, 5 times what is 20,000? That would be 400 child tickets. So I'd need to sell at least 400 if I have 0 adults. And then, I'm just going to be silly here. What if I sell 1,000 of each? I don't even need to do the math. I'm very confident that's going to be well over $2,000. Okay, but I have the X and the Y intercepts, which is what we're going to do later on. And I did that for a reason. Okay, please give it a like if I helped you learn something. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.